Hey there, Winos. This is Vince.Wine, and today I am really excited to be joined by certified sommelier, fellow YouTuber or fellow wine tuber, and one of the smartest people I know when it comes to wine. So I'm really excited to have her on the channel. Hello there, Emma.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Vince. I am honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel and who you are, and then we can jump into things.
Absolutely. So my name is Emma, and I run a YouTube wine channel called Wine Chat. Basically, I started it during lockdown. I usually work in a fine dining restaurant. I live here in London in the UK. And of course, I was sitting around at home. I had not very much to do, and I was getting sick of just reading books to study. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a YouTube channel and try to educate other people about wine to help with my studies. And it's kind of grown from there. So I like to go through different wine reviews, different wine topics, covering different grapes, and educating in a fun and kind of informal way.
Okay, and you have a channel motto. You sign out with it all the time. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I say, drink better, be better. When I first started, I was like, I've got to have a motto. I've got to have something catchy. And basically, I think drink better, be better means drink with more thought. Drink better wine, as in have a look at what producers you're buying. Have a look at where it comes from. Think about your wine when you're drinking it. Don't just buy the cheapest wine in the supermarket. Not that there's anything wrong with cheap wine, but put more thought into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, all right. Well, once again, I'm glad to have Emma Denney with Wine Chat here on our channel. And so I thought today the coolest thing to do would be let's answer some of the internet's most burning questions when it comes to wine. So I'm going to jump over to my browser right now, and I just kind of want to type in like things like how does wine, why does wine, things like that. And let's just see what the top hits are and find out what's going on. So with two Somms putting their brains behind it, we should be able to get some interesting stuff. So I'll pop up one here. I'm gonna start with how does wine? And I love the first question that pops up. How does wine make you feel? How does wine make you feel, Emma?
Wine makes me feel fantastic. I can tell you that.
I agree. Wine, okay, and that's the thing. I do enjoy, drinking wine. For probably about 5 nights a week, I'm usually enjoying wine. Tell me if you're the same way. But I'm not drinking for a head change. I'm not drinking to get drunk. I'm not drinking because there's an inebriation that comes with it. Certainly, that can be fun sometimes. But it's such an enjoyable thing. There's so much to think about and talk about. So yeah, I agree with you. Wine makes me feel fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't drink to get drunk. Really, very, very rarely. I like to have a glass or two every evening. And when I drink, it makes me think about where it came from, who made it, how does it taste, and just you can kind of go through the layers of the wine, and it's kind of fun to dissect. And it sometimes just you feel a little bit relaxed after a glass of wine. For me, that is also very cool.
Yeah, it does have those relaxing factors. That's true, especially with a nice meal accompanying it. So, okay, did you want to shoot for a question here, or should I just keep Googling?
Go for it.
Okay.
I'll try and pull some up.
So let's see. Let me put why does wine give me a headache? Ooh, that's a good one. Emma, why does wine give me a headache?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's not what you probably think. Most people think that getting a headache from wine comes from the sulfites in the wine. This may be true for a very small percentage of the population. I actually have a video on sulfites in wine, and it was really cool to dive into it. But basically, getting a headache from wine is usually caused from dehydration. Or if you're drinking a much cheaper bulk kind of made wine, there may be more additives added into that. So for this, maybe sometimes you can look for an organic or perhaps a biodynamic wine, but it's not the sulfites. Don't blame the sulfites.
or the tannins. That's another one I hear.
No, yeah.
Do that. I have heard before of the additives, and I've mentioned that on my channel before. In the New World, you're allowed up to 3,000 chemicals in winemaking legally, which is just atrocious. And a lot of times, you're right, it's used to cut corners in a cheaper wine. But I've never heard of the dehydration thing. That's so interesting. So what do you recommend? A glass of water, or with every glass, a glass of water with every sip, a gallon of water? What do we do here?
I like to try and do a glass of water with every glass of wine, and then just making sure you're drinking your wine in moderation and not having 2 bottles of wine a night.
Not having 2 bottles.
It's not good for anybody.
I thought that the French and Italian, one bottle for lunch and 2 for dinner.
Yeah.
Where are you joining us from, Emma?
I'm here in London, UK, but I'm originally from New Zealand, so I feel like 2 countries that are both very big on drinking, both New Zealand and the UK. We have a massive pub culture here. Everyone goes to the pub after work. I mean, we can't at the moment, we're still in a national lockdown, but everyone goes down to the pub for a few pints of beer or a bottle of wine or 2 perhaps. So definitely moderation is the key.
Love it. All right, very cool. So it is, 7 p.m. where you are, right? It's 11 a.m. where I am. So I guess it's not too early to join you here. I'll pop this bottle here. I just got off of watching your video on how to drink wine like a pro. That was really cool. So
nice.
That was a good one. All right, let's keep going. So I'm gonna go. Does wine? Okay, does wine? The first one is, does wine go bad? Emma, does wine go bad?
It can. Yes, it can. It can go bad if you leave it open for too long. For me, once a wine is open, even if it's a red, I like to always either put the cork or like a plastic cork back in it and put it in the fridge. Putting it in the fridge and keeping it at a cooler temperature generally makes it last longer. I don't know if this is scientific. It's just something that I do and it always works out. But definitely don't leave it open in a warm area without a cork on. Otherwise, after one day, the wine's going to be gone.
Awesome. Let's go over to is wine, and the top one is, okay, here's one that I've kind of wanted to do a video around, but there's the question is wine good for you? And I have to tell you that I have seen so much science in either direction. For every article that I find that says wine is good for you, I find an article that says wine is terrible for you. I recently read one that said the tannins will protect you from viruses, buzzword there, and and I see all this stuff about oxidants, antioxidants being good for your heart, and then I see stuff about a glass a day could slowly destroy different parts of your body. So what have you heard? Do you have any answers on that?
I don't have any really scientific answers, but I like to think that especially a glass of red wine has a lot of antioxidants in it. I mean, you look at kind of the Europeans and the Mediterranean lifestyle, they drink a lot of wine. I'm saying this, my husband is Italian, so I know that lifestyle quite well. And they all live to be really long and they look beautiful. So I like to think that drinking a little bit of wine in moderation, definitely there has to be some health benefits to it. But I'd really love to actually look into the scientific kind of evidence behind that.
That is a deep rabbit hole. So good luck. Let me know if you find anything definitive.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn because I got to drink some wine.
All right. I've got one. It says, why does wine sometimes taste like vinegar?
Why does wine sometimes taste like vinegar? Well, yeah, I think that's twofold. I think you could answer that with both after the cork has been popped and before the cork has been popped. So
yeah,
before the cork has been popped, it's probably reaching a point where it has gone over. It's past its prime. Another thing that could happen is you can get sometimes, I saw your wine faults video as well that you cover this, and I cover one in a wine faults video as well, in a how to taste wine series, but it was volatile acidity. Volatile acidity, or VA, can do that as well. And so volatile acidity is an occurrence that happens, sort of a natural cellar thing that can happen, that can really get around and infect your wines, and it makes them sort of taste like that again, sort of like nail polish remover, or like these really weird super high acidic things, maybe sometimes vinegariness, and then of course after the cork is popped, at that point, if you leave your wine on the table, as you were saying, for just too long in a warm environment, no cork or something like that, you're probably going to end up with a vinegary taste in your wine. What else do you have on that?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it.
You have another one?
Yeah, I do. Is wine vegan?
is wine vegan? All right, so okay, so I'm in California, so vegan is I'm surrounded by a lot of that sort of vegan culture, and I guess the definition of vegan would be like permission given, right? It has to be like no animal products, or otherwise that if it's okay with the animals, right, then you can have it. So yeah, I would say wine is vegan. I don't know that there's any animal products that I can think of. The only thing that I can think of is sometimes as a fining agent, fish oils can be used. I don't know if that's maybe what you were going to think about, but yeah, that's probably the only animal product I can think of. I know some really are crazy, or I shouldn't say crazy, but super dedicated, over the top biodynamic winemakers also use stuff like cow horns in the soil sometimes. It's kind of culty. So but that's all I've got. What do you have on that?
Yeah, definitely. For me, a wine to be vegan needs to have no animal products used in it. It's most commonly used in the fining process. So you can have isinglass, which is the fish bladders, egg whites. I was speaking to a winemaker recently, and what they do is literally crack open the eggs and pour the egg whites in. This was in South Africa, and I think it was quite a rustic little winery. So that the eggs whites, there's some kind of protein, and just falls to the bottom, and then you just pull it out and have egg whites for breakfast. I think you can use some whey protein, kind of like what you'd have in a protein shake. I'm not sure how they do that though, but especially here in the UK, and I feel like in Europe, a lot of people are starting to move away from that. Definitely in the UK, we have a lot of consumers that are a lot more conscious about it, and they ask, is the wine vegan?
Sure.
I don't know.
All right, well, you heard it here first, folks. Emma Denney's scrambled eggs and wine. So there you have it. All right, let's see what else we got here.
I've got one. It might be a little precise, but how is wine sparkling? I think we're talking about champagne and cava and prosecco and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently I did a video on bubbles, and I just did a Valentine's Day video as well, and on that we talk about different methods of getting sparkling, and I know from watching you that sparkling wines are some of your favorites as well, so I'm sure you've got a lot on there. But yeah, there are different methods of producing bubbles. The one that I recently covered was method ancestral, which is the oldest way of producing bubbles, and it just basically has to do with allowing fermentation to complete in the bottle, and sort of stopping the fermentation and allowing the sugars and yeast to eat each other until you've produced these really, it would end up being very frothy bubbles. And so that was really well shown in a wine, a little well-known wine called Bougie sur Don, which is in the Jura Savoie region of eastern France. So that one was a cool one. You want to talk to us about method champenoise?
Yeah, absolutely. So method champenoise, or traditional method. So kind of leading on from the method ancestral, this is kind of what happened after that. And so for this, the wine goes through a whole first fermentation. It's made into a still wine that you could drink, but it's usually super acidic, so you don't want to drink it. And then they put it into a bottle, and they add some yeast and sugar to make it go through a second fermentation, which is going to create the carbon dioxide. And they put a cork or a crown cap on it so that none of the carbon dioxide, which is naturally produced when you make wine, escapes. And basically it's just going to stay in the bottle. After that, they'll disgorge it and take the sediment out, add a little bit of sugar back in if it's going to be a slightly sweet style. So it's basically the traditional method, what you have in champagne, very quickly summed up. And you also have, especially in New Zealand, we have a few wineries that are more kind of bulk producers, and I think you do in the States as well, that carbonate the wine, which is a very kind of cheap, low quality way. If you want to buy the cheapest kind of sparkling wine you can, they literally, like a soda stream, pump carbon dioxide into your wine.
Wow. Yeah.
But
and is that
I don't think that's what we want to drink.
Probably not. All right. Very cool. Let's see. So I found one here. What wines is what I typed in, and what popped up first is what wines are sweet. That's kind of interesting. And before we answer that one, I think I want to define sweet, right? Because a lot of times, I also working in the wine industry, I have a lot of people come to ask me, I like sweet wines. What sweet wines do you have? And I think a lot of times we confuse sweetness for the perception of fruit, right? So fruitiness and sweetness, they can be kind of mixed. So sometimes when someone says, oh, I really like sweet wines, I might show them a really jammy style Zinfandel, right? California Zinfandel, because it's got so much fruitiness and it's so syrupy in texture that's perceived as sweetness, and they tend to like that. Some maybe Pinots can do that as well, although if it's a really earthy style Pinot, it might scare some people away. But so even though that Zinfandel and Pinot are completely dry wines, they're perceived as fruity, and that can make people happy. So in answering the question, what wines are sweet, what wines are actually sweet? Emma, what wines are out there that you like that are sweet?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you with offering perhaps like a Zinfandel. I love a Zin, a good Napa Valley Zin, especially myself, because it's so fruity and jammy. And I think what a lot of people don't realize as well, especially slightly cheaper wines, there is often a little bit of residual sugar in them that sometimes you can't taste. And a lot of producers will leave that in there because they know that our palates as human beings love sweetness. So when I have a guest in my restaurant that asks me for a sweet wine, and I don't think they're talking about a glass of Sauternes or another kind of dessert wine, I definitely lead them towards really fruit-forward, fruit-driven red wines, or perhaps like a Riesling that may be dry, but it has a lot of fruitiness on it, and sometimes the soft palate makes it feel like it's got a little bit of sweetness to it.
The Winos do want actual sweet dessert wines. Both Wine Chat and Vince.wine have done videos on port, so go check those out. Okay, very cool. We've got time for maybe two more here. You have one for us?
Yeah. How do wines get their flavors?
Ooh, that is a really cool one. How do wines get their flavors? Yeah, that's another common one is, when you get something like orange blossoms or leather or these really abstract flavors, or even something as simple as raspberries, right? A lot of times I get that question, so does that mean that there's raspberries in this wine? And the answer to that would actually be no, not at all. Vitis vinifera, that's the wine grape. I constantly say it's sort of a chameleon, and it does take on terroir characteristics, I believe, but the fruit itself also does lend to what I call a likeness of. It's a likeness of these things. So, orange blossoms. No, there were no orange blossoms in the winemaking process, but something like a Viognier, may offer you orange blossom aromas on the nose, and that's just natural from the fruit itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stuff where you can get like the leather, perhaps some vanilla, that can the leather's more an aging flavor. So if a wine is aged for longer, it's going to develop these tertiary flavors, like maybe sometimes some forest floor, a little bit of mushroom. And so when wine ages, those fruity flavors that you have kind of develop and change into these other flavors. So there was never any mushrooms or leather or forest floor put into your wine. And like with this, I'm smelling some vanilla, and that's definitely coming from some oak aging. And so the wine has 100% been aged in oak, because the vanilla smell is super strong.
And so you categorize that. So the question is, how does it get a flavor? So I think you categorize that in primary, secondary, and tertiary flavors and aromatics. Primary coming from the fruit itself. So that would be anything. So how does wine get its fruity flavor? From the fruit itself. How does wine get flavors like vanilla and cedar and sandalwood? Well, that's a secondary flavor that comes from oak and cellar making techniques. And then you've got these tertiary flavors that come from aging, and that's stuff like leather, pruniness, right? These sort of aged, dried, stewed fruits, right? That can come from aging, which would be tertiary flavors. Right on. Okay, let's wrap up. Let's do one more. Let's do something wild. Let's do, why can't wine be shipped in Michigan? Why can't wine be shipped in Michigan?
You guys have weird laws with your wines in the States. Like when I look into it, in the UK, the EU, Australia, New Zealand, like No, it's fine. Give us your wines. It's fine. Just make sure it's 85% of the grape you say it is.
Right.
That's really all we care about.
Oh,
it's mind-blowing, the states, for
every
me.
single state has its own laws. I mean, it's just so difficult. Okay, let's see. Okay, that didn't work out for a crazy last question. Let's see. How about, can wine give you diarrhea? Can wine corks be recycled? Let's see, wines with turkey. Okay, last one here. So how does wine, and the first one was make you feel, but let's go back and how does wine tasting work? That's a really good question. How does wine tasting work? And I'd like to answer that in two ways. So let's answer that with how would a wine tasting work, right? So rather than, I think when I see that, I want to say, how do you taste wine? For that, I think you've done a recent video and I've done some videos on how to taste wine. So we'll let you winos go watch those. But how does a wine tasting work? How should you do a wine tasting? And then how would a wine tasting work if you go to visit a place? So I'll let you answer as far as, what if I want to do a wine tasting at home? How should a wine tasting go?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, depends if you want to do like perhaps a whole different range of a certain producer or looking at a certain style. I like to always have a theme. Like if we're running a wine tasting, I've been assisting one of my sommelier friends. She runs these incredible virtual online tastings. And so I've been kind of watching her and helping her set those up. And looking at, you always kind of need to have a theme. Are we doing English wine? Are we doing orange wine? Are we doing Cabernets from Napa or Cabernets of the world? And I think that's a really great place to start, is don't just go for it. We're doing a wine tasting. Let's get 10 bottles or 5 bottles of just completely random wines. Go in with the theme so that you can kind of judge wines between each other.
Yeah, that's great advice. So a good theme would be maybe the same wine from different vintages, maybe the same producer doing different wines, maybe the same type of wine from different producers. There's so many things that you can do. Old world versus new world, all those kind of themes would be really cool. And then the second way to answer that question is, how does a wine tasting work if you want to go taste wine? All over the world, I've seen it be, fairly similar. And that is, you can certainly, these days, you definitely want to, always, Google it, look online, and make some phone calls and make appointments when you can. Some places are walk-in these days. That's a little hit and miss. So I would certainly, make some appointments, but, wine tastings, you're typically tasting at a winery, and these are people who are passionate about their product, and they're not there to be wine snobs. They're there to really connect you and help you understand their wines. Usually there's a small tasting fee. A lot of times I see that being waived with purchase of bottles, but you're just learning the story from its home, and they typically give you what's called a flight of 4 to 5 wines, and you taste them in succession, and just get to learn a little bit about everything that a specific winery does. And a great thing to do is just to plan out your day and to hit different stops, and as many as you can handle. And I like Emma's advice of drinking in moderation. When I learned the hard way that I definitely need to down a bottle of wine between a bottle of wine. Oh my gosh, a bottle of water. No, a bottle of water between each stop so that I can continue going throughout my day. But that would be a great day of wine tasting.
God, I can't wait for everything to open up, because I don't know how it is where you are, but here everything is locked down and shut down. But hopefully by the summer everything will be open and I can start going back to wineries. And yeah, definitely I would recommend calling ahead or just checking to see if they're open. But yeah, most places are always really happy to have you come in and try their wine, because basically the winemakers just want to get their product out there. They want to get this story told. So don't ever be scared to call up a winery, even if they don't normally do tastings, or if you think that they might be too busy for you. Always go to wineries. To be honest, people that work in the wine industry on the production side, for me, are usually the most friendly people in the wine industry. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Emma, until then, I can't wait. Maybe you and I can do our own little wine tasting over Zoom. That would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And have our own flight and all that. But okay, winos, go check out Wine Chat, Emma Denney's show at her channel. She does a lot of really great informational videos, and I think that they're also particularly good for up and coming somms. So if you're studying to be in the wine world, her channel's really good because it just really breaks things down in amazing detail, and and she's so interesting to watch. So there's a lot of great information there, and I get a lot of refreshers watching her channel as well. So go check her out. So until we talk next time, drink safe and drink well.
Thank you so much, Vince.
You got it. Cheers. Bye.